Hey guys, I'm back. I'm also Sarah, and it is very nice to meet you. I make these videos where I pretend like I'm talking to my mom, but instead of my mom, it's you, and instead of my ramblings, it's my ramblings plus research. And today we're talking about two of my great loves, the Lizzie Bennet Diaries and The Art of Adaptation. My freshman year, I had to take a gen ed English class, and I just so happened to land in the one about adaptation. We spent the whole semester talking about High Fidelity, the book, the movie, and the show. I even got to write an essay about the second version of Teenage Dream from Glee, which if you know, you know. Honestly, I should just make all of my written essays into video essays so I can use them again. Because guys, I'm kind of good at writing an essay? What? If I put time into it, I'm usually very proud of my writing. But you don't care about any of that. So yes, today we are talking about the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, written by Bernie Sue and Hank Green. Yeah, I know a lot of kids nowadays know Hank Green from TikTok, but this is like Hank Green Vlog Brothers days. It was an adaptation of Pride and Prejudice that took place in 2012, and it's super interesting and I also love it. The show was released on YouTube from 2012 to 2013. I didn't even have a phone until 2014 and didn't even use YouTube until 2014 because my mom thought it would rot my brain, which look at me now. I'm sure she's pleased. Even though, you know what, to be fair, she did suggest I do this, so it's on her. If you're my age and you've never heard of it, I totally get it. If you're in your mid-20s, late 20s, early 30s, you probably have heard of it if you're on YouTube watching this video right now. The first few episodes have over 1 million views, which in 2012 is much bigger than it is now, so you probably heard of it if you were on YouTube at the time, especially if you were a fan of the Vlog Brothers, since it is a Vlog Brother production. Honestly, the only reason I thought to make this video was because I was watching the UnCarly John Green video, and this was coming out around the time that John Green books were getting really popular with teens, so I feel like it's the same-ish audience. But we'll get into details later. Let's just start by answering, what is the Lizzie Bennet Diaries? The Lizzie Bennet Diaries was an internet series written by Bernie Sue and Hank Green. It came out from 2012 to 2013 and ended up having 100 episodes. There were also a few Q&A episodes, so it was actually more than 100, and there were a few follow-up videos too. So I'm just gonna say 110 just to be safe. While this might sound like a lot, each episode was only 3 to 5 minutes long, which is crazy in today's standards. Honestly, I only ever saw videos go down below 10 minutes when the monetizing thing changed, but even then, most videos I watch now are at least 15 minutes long, if not 4 hours long, like Kian Carlisle and Jenny Nicholson. And you know what? I eat those up. It's really concerning. I have too much time, and I probably should just be making my own videos instead of watching their videos for several hours, but look at me. I'm making one. It's fine. Like I said before, it's an adaptation of Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, but it takes place in 2012 and was released in 2012, so it's very 2012. You can definitely see that it's from 2012 just by looking. The clothes are definitely 2012. The vibes are definitely 2012. The Hunger Games book in the bookshelf behind her, definitely 2012. She mentioned a mustache party at one point, and honestly, that sent me back. I'm pretty sure I have a mustache mood necklace at home, but I didn't think to bring that, and honestly, that's a shame. But along with the aesthetics of it all, it comes with a 2012 understanding of what a vlog is, too. Vlog means video blog, and she definitely treats her vlogs like that. She usually does her vlogs in one sitting and just talks about her whole day at once. She's not like Zoella, who takes her camera everywhere she goes and is like, oh look, me and Alfie are Christmas shopping. I would say sorry to the British people, but they colonized me, so I'm not gonna do that. So it really does feel like a vlog, except you can see everyone in it, and it's great. It also features paid actors and scripts and sets, and it's all very official, and I think you need the Vlog Brothers money to do that. And you know what? Hank had it, so good for him. It's not one of these amateur things that you'll see that are made by a group of friends. It's very much an actual official production. So with all the logistics out of the way, let's get into the plots. Oh, also, I'm gonna be doing my makeup. This makeup from Atonement, there's barely anything on her face, I know, but I have to wash my face and shower and stuff after this so I can go to class, so leave me alone. So we actually open up the show with the first line of Pride and Prejudice, which I think was a cute little thing to do. Lizzie introduces us to herself. She's a 24-year-old grad student in mass communications. She's quirky, she's different, she's not like other girls, but things change. She lives with her mom, dad, and 2 sisters, Lydia and Jane. The second episode is pretty much just describing her sisters, so So here's a brief introduction to them. Her older sister Jane is lovely and perfect, and she loves her so much. She's responsible, soft-spoken, caring, sweet, all the good things. Her younger sister Lydia, on the other hand, is, and I quote, a stupid, hoary slut, which is super nice. Lizzie seems to think that she's super irresponsible. All she does is drink and party. She's obsessed with boys. She doesn't go to school. In essence, in Lizzie's mind, Lydia is just a big mess. She loves her, but she's a mess. Their dad is kind and patient and deals with their mother very well, which is apparently very difficult. Their mom is part of what Lizzie calls the 2.5 WPF club, 2.5 kids, white picket fence. That is what she wants for her 3 daughters. She's always pressuring her daughters to get married. She's always putting them in situations with men that she thinks are eligible. Lizzie finds her very pushy and annoying, but you know, she still loves her parents. Also, along with her biological family, we see a lot of Charlotte Lou. In the book, her name is Charlotte Lucas. This happens a couple of times, but I will tell you when it happens. She is Lizzie's best friend who helps her edit and film these videos, and she's also great. I love Charlotte Lou. One day, Lizzie starts doing this vlog as part of her thesis, so that's why we're getting this vlog in the first place. That is the context in which this is being created. But up until this point, everything is much as it usually is in the Bennet household until one, Bing Lee, not Bingley like in the book, Bing Lee, moves into the mansion in their neighborhood. Mrs. Bennet is obviously very excited. A young, single, eligible man moving into their neighborhood who she knows is rich because he's in med school and bought this big mansion. He has to be for one of her daughters. One of them has to marry him. And she makes this very much known to everyone in her family. Lydia's excited that this guy's coming because he's young and new and hot and she's boy crazy. But the other 2 sisters are kind of just like, some guy. Mrs. Bennet is putting pressure on everyone to meet this guy. She's putting pressure on Mr. Bennet to go and meet the guy ahead of time so that they can have an introduction, which is a little strange when it's out of the book because this takes place in 2012 and that's not how things work anymore, but I'll let it slide. She's pretty much freaking out about introducing herself and her children to Bingley, but it eventually happens at a wedding. At a mutual friend's wedding, Jane and Bing really start to hit it off. He dances with her all night. She's very interested. He's very interested. And obviously, Mrs. Bennet is very pleased. Lizzie's a little suspicious because, you know, this was her mom's idea and that's always a bad idea in her head. But she doesn't have too much time to be suspicious because she decides to fixate on someone else. Mr. Bing Lee's friend, Mr. William Darcy. Yup. If you don't know anything about Pride and Prejudice, you probably know that name. William Darcy is very cold. She thinks he's rude. He doesn't dance with anyone all night except with her because she catches the bouquet and he catches the garter, so they have to dance together. She overhears him saying that Jane is the only tolerable pretty girl in the room and she's obviously offended, and she decides, Mr. Darcy, rude, off the table, we hate him. And shockingly enough, Mrs. Bennet agrees. Mr. Darcy is richer than Bing, also single, but she's putting no pressure on Lizzie to marry this guy. So Lizzie's pretty much sure, hey, this guy is objectively bad, he sucks. Even Jane, who is kind to everyone and will always see the good parts of everyone, is hesitant to say anything positive about him except that he is tall. So yeah, this Darcy guy is not a very popular presence within the Bennet household. But hey, who cares about Mr. Darcy? We care about Jane and Bing, right? And they're doing great. They keep going on dates and she really likes him and he very obviously really likes her. He's very sweet. He sent flowers to her work, which is so cute. And honestly, for a while, they just get along really well. Meanwhile, during swim week at Lizzie's college, she meets this man named George Wickham. George Wickham is the swim coach of one of the other competing colleges, and she really hits it off with him. He's hot and nice and intelligent, and she really likes him. Plus, he reveals that he has beef with who? Mr. Darcy. Yeah, he tells her and us that him and Mr. Darcy were raised together. Mr. Darcy's father was very fond of Wickham and promised that one day he would pay for him to be able to go to a fancy college. However, upon his death, Mr. Darcy refused to let Wickham have the money, meaning he couldn't go to college because he wasn't rich like the Darcys. Lizzie hears this and is like, oh, that sucks first, but also, I was right. This guy sucks. And you know what? I get it. I really do get it because I like being right when someone sucks. Because I usually am right. I get it. But alas, George Wickham is not actually from here, so throughout the story, he just kind of goes back to where he's from and comes back to see Lizzie. Jane and Bing continue to be cute together until Bing's birthday party. He throws this huge birthday party for everyone. Everyone is there. And then the next day, Jane decides, hey, I'm gonna bake him some cookies to celebrate his birthday privately, and it's all gonna be very cute and nice. And she goes over to the house and Bingley is gone. He didn't say anything. We don't know where he is. He's just magically gone until she gets a tweet notification for his Twitter and he says, love small towns, but I'm headed back to LA. And Jane is like, Since when? I thought we were together and you're just leaving without telling me? And Jane is heartbroken. She basically becomes a recluse and stays in her room alone for several days until she comes out and tries to pretend everything is fine. Everything is not fine. And Lizzie suggests that she go to LA to try and see if she can get some closure from Bingley. Jane says she'll think about it, but then she calls her work and says, hey, can I transfer to the position in LA? They say yes. And she decides, hey, I'm gonna go work on my career. And if I see Bingley there, I see him. And if not, I don't. Goodbye, Jane. She goes to LA. At some point, Lizzie and Charlotte go to VidCon, which is funny because the Green brothers made VidCon, and she's talking about, oh, I hope I can get a pass. And you're like, Lizzie, girl, we know you can. But while at VidCon, she runs into an old friend, Mr. Ricky Collins. Ricky Collins is her grade school friend, and their parents are friends. They're from the same place. And he's watched her vlogs. He now runs a media company where he tries to make video productions, and he's seen Lizzie's vlogs and thinks she would be perfect to be his business partner. Lizzie is like so hostile towards this, but Charlotte keeps telling her to just give it a chance because this guy has shmoney and he will pay her shmoney to do this. But Lizzie is so insistent that she does not want to do this, and she finds him so annoying, and she calls him names on the vlogs despite knowing that he watches the vlogs. Until one day he officially offers her the position of business partner, and much like in the book with his proposal of marriage, she's very much like, no, 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 no. Respectfully, no. And he's like, no, I get it. You're playing hard to get. Here is an extra benefits package and a sign-on bonus. And she's like, I promise I'm not playing hard to get. I don't want this position. And he just can't take the hint, but eventually he figures it out. And much like the book, he instead goes to Charlotte Lou and offers her the same position. We actually see this happen on camera too. So that's very fun. Lizzie is very upset. She thinks Charlotte is throwing away her dreams by taking this job. And Charlotte basically goes, my dreams? I'm not even working on my dreams. I'm working on yours. Because, you know, she's filming and editing the vlogs. And Lizzie gets shut up real quick, and Charlotte moves to go work with Ricky Collins. So at this point, her older sister and her best friend have both left her. She is alone with Lydia. But Lizzie realizes how wrong she was about Charlotte and decides to go visit her at Collins and Collins. While she's there, she's invited to dinner with Ricky's venture capitalist mentor, Miss Catherine de Bourgh, which I love they keep Catherine de Bourgh from the book. I didn't know where she was going to fit in, but she fit in. She's definitely weird and judgy, but also instead of having a daughter with an illness, she has an asthmatic dog, which is, I don't know. But Lizzie also finds out that who is Miss Catherine de Bourgh's nephew? Oh yeah, Mr. Darcy. Lizzie's none too pleased about this, even though she really doesn't see him until one day who shows up but one Mr. William Darcy. Yeah, Mr. Darcy shows up under the guise of reviewing the business for his aunt, but really he came to see Lizzie. And we get, for the first time, a Mr. Darcy reveal in the videos. It's very exciting. And we don't really know what Lizzie was expecting to hear from him, but what she got was definitely not that, because Mr. Darcy comes in and confesses he's in love with her. Right, Lizzie this whole time has been hating this guy and thinks he's been so rude and so superior, but he actually has been in love with her this whole time? She's confused because obviously, duh, we never knew this was happening, but also because she found out that Mr. Darcy was the reason being left without saying goodbye to Jane. Yeah, that big depression her sister went through, the whole move to LA, that's all Mr. Darcy's fault, and she is pissed. So she goes, respectfully, ew. And also, why would you do that to my sister and Bing? And he goes, oh, I thought she was just using him for his money. And also there was an indiscretion at his birthday party, which he does not explain, which is so random. And then he goes on to mention how Lizzie's mom was really overt about the whole money aspect and how she was so proud that Jane was getting with this rich man. So he kind of took that as the whole family sentiment and told Bing, hey, this girl is about to take advantage of you, leave. And Bing is so gullible that he went, okay. And he left. Lizzie's furious and she's like, how dare you assume things about my sister's feelings? She was obviously obsessed with him, blah, 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 blah. And not only that, but the thing that happened with Mr. Wickham, I don't like you even a little bit. I don't know how you could have thought that I did. And he goes, oh, the thing that happened with Mr. Wickham? Right, right, right. That's what you think of me? Cool, 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 cool. Goodbye. And he leaves. And Lizzie's like, okay, sick. That just happened. Oh yeah, and also after all of this, she exposes the vlogs. So now he knows about the vlogs. But a little while after all of this, he comes back to her because he's leaving, because he came to confess his love and failed and is going home. But before he leaves, he wants to give Lizzie a letter. So he does that, and then the camera cuts and the episode ends. Lizzie at first is very, very hesitant to tell anyone what was in the letter letter because it is not her secret to tell, but she makes it very clear that she is no longer on George Wickham's side in all of this and that he's kind of a douche. Eventually, Charlotte convinces her to talk about it in hypothetical terms using Darvid and Batman, which is the names she used when she was explaining Wickham's side of the story too. Darvid's dad did promise Batman that money, but Batman was given the money upon Darvid's dad's death. Darvid offered to just pay it directly to the university, but Batman said, no, I'll take it. And he went through all of the money that was supposed to pay for all 4 years in one semester and came back to Darvid for more. There's another thing that happens in the letter that she just decides not to tell us because it is none of her business. She's not a fan of Wickham anymore. She's kind of like put him on the back burner, and not on the back burner. She's taking him off the stove entirely. She then decides to do her last year of grad school entirely in independent studies. So what she's going to do is go to 3 different companies and learn about how they use media and online stuff. I don't really care, though it is a big part of the show. So if you care, you might like it. So obviously her first one is Collins and Collins because she's, I don't know, already there. And she starts to work with Charlotte and talk to Mr. Collins about his job and stuff. And it's all going fine and well until they go home for the holidays because she's done with her time at Collins and Collins. They go back for Thanksgiving and that's all fine and well. And that's when Charlotte bribes Lizzie to tell the story that was in the letter. And then Charlotte obviously has to go back to work and Lizzie is working with this British company online instead of, you know, being in person. Then it is winter time. Lizzie's father is putting up his train set because that's a thing he does. And Lydia, like all cool girls, has a December birthday, thank you. And Lizzie forgets about her birthday. 666, cool, 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 great sister. But Lydia decides Mom and Dad are out, we're throwing a party, and they said yes. Lizzie's not too pleased, and she's like, Lydia, you're so irresponsible. I don't know why Mom and Dad are letting you do this, blah, 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 blah. But Lydia's like, I don't care. I'm still doing it. Have fun. So they throw this big party, and it's a big mess, and Lizzie the whole time is like, oh my God, Lydia is so irresponsible. She invited the entire men's volleyball team. But hey, maybe the men's volleyball team is nice, you know? And she's maintaining that whole stupid hoary slut thing that she was calling Lydia earlier. Plus, Lydia's decided to turn her birthday into a birth fortnight, and she's going to the bars like every night with Lizzie and using her actual ID for the first time. But a few days after her birthday, Lizzie gives her her birthday present, and it is called, and I quote, "Where did I leave my car? The Party Girl's Guide to Being a Responsible Adult." She thinks it's a joke, and she's like, oh my God, Lizzie, you're so funny at giving joke gifts. And Lizzie's like, no, I'm being for real. Like, you need to be a responsible adult. And at this point, Lydia's fed up, and she's like, hey, you think I'm irresponsible? You have not seen Irresponsible yet. Watch me go be irresponsible. And she leaves for Las Vegas for New Year's Eve, and we don't see her for a while after. Lizzie still thinks she's super right, though the people in her life who have watched the vlogs are like, hey girlie, you're being a little too harsh. But Lizzie's sticking to her guns. But you know, Lizzie still has work to do. So once the holidays are over, she goes to work at her third and final company, Pemberley Digital. And she goes, that sounds familiar. And she shows up and she's like, yeah, Mr. Darcy owns Pemberley Digital. I'm working under Mr. Darcy. I'm gonna have to interview Mr. Darcy. This is so awkward because the last time we talked, he confessed that he was in love with me, and then I told him I hated him. So that's super cute. And yeah, that's a little messy. But you know, Lizzie still has to go do it. So she goes and does it. And she meets Darcy's little sister, Gigi, and she's lovely and kind and watches the vlogs and thinks they're very funny. And honestly, Lizzie's kind of having a good time at Pemberley Digital. It's a gorgeous place to work. Mr. Darcy's nice, Gigi's being nice, and everything's pretty okay. Bingley comes to see her and is like, hey, how's Jane? And she's like, maybe you should go ask Jane. How's Jane? And then she's like, do you not know that Mr. Darcy and your sister control your entire life? Yeah, he has a sister. She's not that relevant. And he's like, yeah, I just trust them. And she's like, you're being so stupid. And then he leaves. And everything's going fine, and she's getting along with Darcy. And one day he's like, hey, do you want to go to the opera? Me and Gigi have seats, like a box at the opera. And she's like, yeah, I'd love to go with you and Gigi. And he goes, no, 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 no. Gigi can't come. She has tennis tonight. It would just be with me. And she goes, yeah, I would like to go. And then she gets a call. And Jane's like, you have to come home immediately. There's something wrong with Lydia. We need your help immediately. There's something wrong. And so Lizzie obviously freaks out, and she's right there with Mr. Darcy, and she's like, I need to get home. I need to buy these tickets, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, I will get you a car. I will buy you plane tickets. We will get this thing done, which he's the kind of guy you want to have in a crisis, right? It's very nice. And he's obviously trying to take care of Lizzie, which makes sense since he was, in love with her. So what is this big crisis with Lydia? Honestly, I'm gonna go into a whole deep dive about Lydia later, so I'm not gonna say it in too much detail. But essentially, over New Year's Eve, Lydia got with who? George Wickham. Yeah, they got into a whole relationship and he filmed them doing it. And now he's putting up a website that's like, ooh, YouTube star Lydia Bennet sex tape, which is super cool and awesome and totally awesome. And Lizzie is like, oh my God, I can't believe Lydia's doing this. And she's like letting this happen. And she's talking to Lydia when she's home and is like, I can't believe this is happening. And Lydia's like, I don't know what you're talking about. So Lizzie shows her the website and Lydia has a panic attack and runs out of the room. So yeah, we're now pretty clear that Lydia did not know this was happening and isn't okay with it. So Jane, Charlotte, Lizzie, their dad, everyone is trying to work on getting this video down, getting this website down. The video's not up yet, so they're doing everything they can because there's a countdown timer until it comes out. But one day, the countdown timer stops, the video comes down. There's no more website. And Lydia knows who did it, but she's like, I don't know, someone must have done it. I wonder who. Eventually, once Lydia's feeling better, she tells Lizzie, hey, it was Mr. Darcy. Mr. Darcy did that. And so Lizzie's like, oh my God. Yeah, apparently he bought out the company and destroyed all copies of this sex tape. So this is why you need a man with money, so he can do that kind of thing for you. Lizzie's obviously pleased. She's like, well, I was really getting along with Darcy and we cleared up that whole Wickham thing. And obviously he sucks. So I'm having a better time and we're all chilling and cool. But you know, she is still at home and Darcy is still at Pemberley Digital and she's still there taking care of Lydia. Jane is still there taking care of Lydia. We think, hey, nothing's gonna happen. Until one Mr. Bingley shows up in town. He comes to their house with a gift bag in hand, trying to apologize to Jane. And Jane doesn't want to talk to him, and so he leaves. But, you know, Mrs. Bennet catches him on the way out and makes him come to dinner every single night, despite the fact that Jane and Lizzie and Lydia are not very happy with him. Jane reveals that she has gotten a job in New York where she's going to be treated better and paid better, and she's so excited. So she's leaving for New York in a couple of days. And she tells her family, but not Bing. So they're doing their final episode with Jane, and Bing walks in the room because he found out about New York. And he goes, wow, were you gonna tell me? And she was like, yeah, before you left? Yeah? Which, hold up, who's talking here? Because I know it's not you, Mr. Bingley. But then they have a little convo, and she's like, I'm not staying. You don't get to come here and tell me to stay or ask me to stay. That's not fair. And he goes, I'm not going to ask you to stay. I'm going to ask to come with you to New York. And she's like, what? No. You can't come with me to New York. That's so strange. You left me for no reason, remember? You listened to your random friend and just left me for no reason, remember? And he's like, yeah, but you know, I really like you and I know you really like me, blah, 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 blah. And Jane's like, yeah, I really did like you. And he gets up to leave and she's like, wait, if you come to New York, you have to come for yourself. He tells her he quit med school because he realized he didn't actually want to be a doctor, which Bing in this one is Asian. So that feels a little, you know, whatever. Apparently his parents were pressuring him to be a doctor. Okay. He's like, yeah, I don't want to be a doctor, but I do want to help people. And I've been doing a lot of charity work for these past few months. And she goes, you know, there's a lot of people to help in New York. And he goes, yeah, there are. And she's like, there are rules here. I will be moving and doing my job and focusing on my career in my own apartment. You can move there in your own apartment or house or whatever, and you have to work on stuff too. You're not there for me. Good on you, Jane. You ate that up. Thank you. And then they kiss and make up and whatever. And Jane leaves for New York and everyone's sad, but you know, she's doing her thing. And honestly, Jane has grown so much from episode 1. We love her. Pop off, Jane. But we've left one thing unresolved here, right? Where's Mr. Darcy? Well, Mr. Darcy pulls a Bingley and is like, hey, Lizzie, I'm here at your house. And, you know, they have a confession scene and it's great and lovely and they kiss and make up too. It's great. And we find out that after she's done with grad school, Lizzie has decided she wants to make her own media company. Darcy offers her a job. Obviously, Collins and Collins offered her a job, but no, she wants to become one of their competitors rather than working for them. And that's how we end the show. Lizzie has professional aspirations. Jane has professional aspirations. Charlotte got a job. Lydia's healing. Jane and Bing are together. Lizzie and Darcy are together. All is well in the world of the Bennets. And yeah, obviously it's a little different than, I don't know, the original Pride and Prejudice, but it also takes place in 2012, so of course it is. And the plot pretty much ends the same except for the whole professional aspirations for women bit. Before I get into the specifics of what I really think this version did well, I want to talk about Lydia Bennet because Lydia Bennet deserved better. Obviously, we are introduced to Lydia with Lizzie calling her a stupid, hoary slut, which is a super cute and kind way to describe your sister. Love that for you, Lizzie. At the beginning of the show, Lydia is still in her undergrad. She's 20 years old, 4 years younger than Lizzie, and she's a very big party girl. She likes to go to Carter's, which is their bar, every single night. She loves the boys, she loves to drink, she loves to party. She's that kind of girl. Lizzie is super rude to Lydia and keeps telling her how irresponsible she is and how embarrassing she's being and how she shouldn't do any of the stuff she's doing. Which, to be fair, Lydia is 20 years old. Let her go be 20 years old. And also, she's such a slut shamer, it's annoying. I think the makeup's done, and it's fine. At some point in the show, I don't think this was actually relevant enough to talk about because it doesn't change any dynamics too much. Mrs. Bennet decides that they need to do renovations on the house, and Jane just so happens to have to go and live with Bingley. And Lizzie comes with her because she does not want to be stuck in the small house of their cousin with their mom and dad and Lydia. But Lydia goes with her mom and dad to their cousin Mary's house. Mary, I think, is just a bit younger than Lydia, but they actually become friends. Mary's kind of a goth and Lydia's very much not. They help each other with the things that they're not very good at. Like, Mary has a crush and Lydia helps her with that. And then Lydia has trouble with school and Mary helps her with that. And why do we know any of this? It's not featured in the original series. Oh, because when Lydia leaves Lizzie, she starts her own vlog. Lydia famously loved being in those vlogs. She loved the attention. She loved to hijack a vlog. So yeah, she just decided to make her own vlog. But honestly, her friendship with Mary was very, very sweet, and they seemed like very genuine close friends. And she even invites Mary to her birthday party after she's done living with her. So there's no like obligation to be close to each other anymore. She does come home after the renovations are done. She leaves Mary behind, but they're still friends. They're still talking. And then famous, the birthday gift she gets from Lizzie that tells her she's an irresponsible child. This really sets her off, and I think it makes sense. Lizzie has just been nagging and nagging and nagging and telling her how irresponsible and bad she is for this whole time. And I think she was just so sick of it that she was like, fine, if I suck, I'm gonna prove you right. I do suck. I'm going to Las Vegas for New Year's Eve. Now, while she was back at home and Lizzie was back at home, those vlogs that she was doing stopped. But as soon as she leaves for Las Vegas, they start up again. We see her getting ready to party, and like, it's obviously very intense and she doesn't really seem like herself. And then one episode she's like, hey, guess who I saw in Las Vegas? George Wickham. I know he and Lizzie were together, but you know, it's like he likes me now. And we're obviously like, oh no, oh no, 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 no. Because we know what happens, right? She does not know that. She feels really isolated from her family because, you know, Jane's in LA, and during one of her vlogs, she runs away to visit Jane, but Jane is in LA and that's not something she can go and do sustainably. Lizzie obviously has very little respect for her and she does not want to be around that energy. And so Wickham comes in at a very convenient time. And George does what I think in the modern day we would call love bombing. They tell each other they love each other very early. She's obviously not herself. She is so subdued and just going, yeah, George, whatever you say, George. And that is not Lydia. And you can just see it in her vlogs. She is not doing well. It's really concerning. And the next time we see Lydia, it's when she finds out what George has done. She goes into hiding for a few days because I don't think she could stand the idea that that was happening to her. And then when she comes out though, she has this big breakdown. Episode 87, if you don't want to watch any other episode of this show, watch episode 87. It is so good. It is 8 minutes. So much longer than the usual episodes, but it is excellent. Honestly, I wish I could put the entire 8 minutes in, but obviously I wouldn't do that because that's not right. It shows a lot of character growth from Lizzie, of all people. We've been seeing her be like, not like other girls this whole time and being so slut-shamey and like mean to Lydia because she's obsessed with boys, but she has a breakdown and it is so good to watch.
Sometimes I feel so clever and rational and appropriately analytical about the world around me. I'm a grad student. It's what I do, what I'm supposed to be skilled at doing, communicating and relating and acknowledging that people do not fit into neat little boxes all wrapped and tied up in string. But here we are. My name is Lizzie Bennet. And I'm out of tools for this.
For once, we finally get to see Lizzie be self-aware. This whole time, everyone around her has been saying, oh, you know, this is just what Lizzie thinks on these vlogs. And she's like, what? I'm like so perceptive and good and I know everything. And everyone's like, okay, Lizzie, It's just what you think. Even early on, people were convinced that Darcy liked her, and she was like, no, he was being rude. And people had to hijack the vlog to tell us that Darcy actually liked her. It was very funny. So for the first time, we have to see her reckoning with that, and it's really good. It's very satisfying too, because we saw her talk about Lydia in one way for this entire show, and then to see her finally realize that Lydia is, I don't know, an actual human being is really good. It starts out with just Lizzie talking to the camera, but then Lydia comes out because she hears that Lizzie is talking about her. And Lydia has this like monologue breakdown. She tells Lizzie that the filming was consensual because George was like, I don't think you love me as much as I love you. And this is proof that you love me. So you have to let me film. And she said yes. I don't even really know if that counts as consensual, but she did say yes, I guess. And Lydia is so convinced that just because she said yes to the filming, she should have known that he was going to do something like put it online or show his friends. And Lizzie's like, no, you didn't consent to that. That's not okay. You don't have to accept that as something that just happened. But she's just having this huge breakdown and talking about how she actually deserved it and how this is all her fault. And Lizzie is trying to convince her otherwise, but do you remember when Lizzie called her a stupid hoary slut? Yeah, I do. And you know who else does? Lydia. Lydia quotes Lizzie back to her face and goes, oh, I was just being a stupid hoary slut again. She ate her up. She ate her up, to be fair. This is so sad. I love Lydia. And Lizzie says this, and it's really great. You don't deserve awful things because you trusted someone who was there for you when no one else was around. So Lizzie is finally acknowledging, hey, I pushed you away. You didn't have anyone. He saw that you were vulnerable and that you needed someone to really love and support you. And he decided to be that and then take advantage of it to hurt you. And then Lydia, oh my God, poor Lydia, breaking down at this point goes, if he's all bad, then what does that make me? I love him so much. I miss him. Why doesn't he love me? And it's just, it's so sad. It's this whole thing of like, he made her fall in love with him. He was there at such a convenient time, being so supportive and kind and caring and loving until he wasn't. And she fell for it. I don't even know if fell for it's the right word, but she, accepted the love that she thought she was receiving. And he took advantage of that. And that is so sad. And it's also not her fault. But it's so sad that she's still in love with him, but it makes sense. This whole situation's very complicated, but the show makes it very clear that it is on Lydia's side. Lydia is not at fault for this. Lizzie doesn't think Lydia's at fault for this. Nobody in her family does. It's good. Obviously, we know that Darcy swoops in and fixes things. He takes the site down. Lydia knows this. And when she tells Lizzie, they have a conversation and Lizzie goes, I didn't really know you. And Lydia says, I didn't really let you. And Lydia's like, hey, I feel really, really bad a lot, and it feels awful when I'm alone. So if it's okay, while you're around, if you would just hang out with me, and it's not even that big of a deal, and it's fine, and you really don't have to. And Lizzie is like, of course I will help you. Thank you for asking me for help. And they hug, and it's great. And it made me so happy to watch, and it was so good. If you don't know anything about Pride and Prejudice, in Pride and Prejudice, Lydia runs away with Wickham outside of wedlock, and then everyone has to figure it out because Wickham is asking for money before he marries Lydia to make it right. It's just this big mess that Darcy fixes in Pride and Prejudice too. But Lizzie sort of just sees Lydia as this boy crazy, irresponsible girl for the whole time. In the book, Lydia is younger than 20, I'm pretty sure. So it makes even more sense that she is being irresponsible because, I don't know, she's like 16. Yeah, Lydia was 15 years old in the book, and Lizzie is still framing her as the person at fault for all of this, when clearly she's just been taken advantage of by this guy. I don't love how that's framed. I understand why it's framed that way at that time, but it's still gross and icky, and I think we should have had more empathy for Lydia, and I think this show does a good job of doing that. I think Lydia's actress is the best one by far. I think she has the most serious storyline, and she does it really, really well. She plays a great Lydia for who Lydia is in this show, and I'm a big fan. Everyone go support her, love her, go watch episode 87. If you're not going to watch anything else, go watch episode 87. But there's also some other stuff that I really like about this show specifically. The show is very meta. So yes, it is a vlog series, but it's a vlog series made by someone who's studying internet communication and forms of media. So it's very meta in that way. She like goes to classes about this stuff and her mentor does lectures about this stuff. She talks to Darcy and Ricky and Charlotte about all of this because it is obviously her passion. And at the end of the day, she's doing a business, which is making content like this. So, you know, she's kind of a girl boss. And one way they sort of incorporate this meta element into it is by having other series within this world. So specifically within the Lizzie Bennet Diaries stuff, there are series obviously from Lydia, which we talked about earlier. There's one from Charlotte's sister Maria and one from Darcy's sister Gigi. So we get the sisters of some of our main characters who are doing these other series. Let's talk about Lydia first. She does vlogs anytime she's not with Lizzie to be in Lizzie's vlogs. She famously says that doing her own vlogs are too much work, and so she just would rather be in Lizzie's vlogs because, you know, Lizzie films and edits them, or Charlotte films and edits them. And you know what? That's so real. Editing is not my favorite thing to do ever either. Me and Lydia. But this also is reflected in the quality of her vlogs. Lizzie's vlogs are very clearly done with a good camera, like good camera quality, good mic quality. Lydia's vlogs are done with her phone, and you can tell the camera quality is really bad, the sound quality is not nearly as good, and she's like using this angle sometimes to film. Sometimes she will set it up properly, but half the time she's just like, hey guys, like this is my cat. Also, her cat is named Kitty, because they don't have Kitty in the show. It's great. And I think that's a great element. They're really using the medium, which we'll talk about later, to actually convey the story and to characterize the characters and their motivations, and I love it. Maria Lou, Charlotte's sister, her video series is her being mentored by Charlotte, like professionally, and so that's done with Charlotte's professional camera, and it's very well composed. And then Gigi's is a demonstration of a new software that Pemberley Digital is using, and it's on the Pemberley Digital YouTube channel. It's very professional, it has great graphics, it's obviously been through a professional editing team, and you can tell that within the story it has been, so it's really well done, and it makes sense that it is coming out from Pemberley Digital, not just like Gigi putting this out. And I really like that they put in that effort to change the camera quality, the editing quality, the sound quality for each series to make sure you knew what those video series purposes were, which is so cool. It's obvious that they were very mindful about what was happening in all of these, and they put a lot of effort into it. They didn't go into any of this without thinking about how it would affect the characters and what it would make the characters look like, and so I love it. It's great. Lydia's is the only one that I've watched fully through because, you know, for the plot, but I'm sure the other two are fine. I'm sure they're good. I have seen what they look like though, so I can tell you about that kind of like camera quality editing kind of thing. I'm going to talk a little bit more about how this show takes advantage of its medium later, but that's just for those extra series. Also, there's this running theory that Mr. Darcy is neurodivergent, and this show is no different. They do him very, very well that way, and it feels like Mr. Darcy, and when you see him, you're like, yeah, this is the kind of guy who makes her think that she hates him when he was actually in love with her and just couldn't talk to him. So, random, but I really love that too. Now let's talk about why this show is a great example of adaptation. I have a very specific definition of what I think makes a good adaptation, and I don't necessarily think that everyone else also has this definition. And if you've been here long enough to see my Dune video, you know how I feel about that movie. So here is my definition. A piece of media based on another piece of media that maintains the overall essence of the original work while understanding and embracing the new medium of communicating the story and the changes needed to be made to be a good example of it. So that's a lot of words, but essentially, the new adaptation has to be the same vibes as the original piece of work, but it also has to make changes because it might be changing the medium by which we're communicating the story. So like turning something from a book to a movie or a movie to a book, that kind of thing. What makes a good book does not necessarily make a good movie, and there are aspects to a book that you don't have in a movie and aspects to a movie that you don't have in a book, and so you need to take advantage of those things because those are elements specific to their medium. If you've been here for Dune, you know that I'm mad about Dune because it's so slow and boring and it doesn't take advantage of the fact that it is a movie to get anything done. I don't want to talk about Dune. I don't want to hear your arguments about Dune. If you have beef with me over Dune, go talk about it on my Dune video. This is about Lizzie Bennet Diaries, okay? Okay. I don't think an adaptation necessarily has to be really, really good. Like a good adaptation, yes, but not necessarily like a good movie or a good TV show. It can be kind of bad, but as long as it maintains the fact that it is, from that original piece of work and maintains at least that quality, plus maintaining the vibe, plus, being a movie or a book that is properly existing as a movie or a book, then I think it's good. One example of a movie that I love that is an adaptation of a book is Angus Thongs and Perfect Snogging. That movie is not technically a good movie. It is a Nickelodeon movie for babies. Not babies. I don't think babies should be watching that movie, but for like middle schoolers, tweens, teens. And it is also a perfect adaptation. That book is like a scholastic book fair book. It is made for the young girlies who like romance but can only handle some of it because they're so young. And that movie was made for the middle schoolers. The narration is great. The things that happen in it are great. There's cute boys and there's music, and the music's really good and appropriate. These girls are doing very silly things that I think in any other movie would look really stupid, but it's perfect for the book because it feels like you're watching like a Judy Blume movie. If you've never been a middle school girl, you might not get it, but it's very similar to like Diary of a Wimpy Kid, because Diary of a Wimpy Kid is obviously a movie with live action people, but also it feels the same as those books feel. And I think that's what it does really well. Yeah, that's another example. Diary of a Wimpy Kid. It doesn't necessarily have every single aspect from the books, though I think that's a little easier when they're short books for kids, but I think it still does a really, really good job of maintaining the fact that it is for middle school girls and feeling like a movie that you would love as a middle school girl. It also fits so well into its time period. It feels so very 13 in the 2000s, and I love it. I love that movie. Another thing that I think is like a near perfect adaptation is the first Harry Potter movie. I have issues with the rest of them, and I hate J.K. Rowling. I hope you know that. I hate J.K. Rowling so much. I do not condone you buying anything from that woman or using anything to support that woman. Please stay as far away from her as possible. Trans women are real women and deserve to use the bathroom. So I hate J.K. Rowling. But aside from that, I like the books. I'm sorry. I did like the books. But I get them from like my library and not like I don't buy the books. A big part of that first book is that he's going from this almost comically abusive environment where it's like, I cannot fathom this happening. Like he's genuinely living in a closet under the stairs and his family is genuinely that stuck up and weird and crazy rude. And yeah, they are. He's going from that super duper, extremely abusive situation to this cool, absurd, magical world where nothing is normal. I think they say it in the Pretty Much It video where they're watching it, but someone's dad said it was too ooh, ah for them. Like there's too much like, oh my God, look at the broom, it's flying. But I think that's what makes it really good. Harry Potter's our POV character. He's our guy. So we are supposed to be as awestruck as he is in the movie. In the book, he can just tell us that, or the author can just tell us that, and we can get all these beautiful descriptions of all this magical stuff and these horrific descriptions of the abuse. Instead, they get really good actors to play the abusive family members, and they're so exaggerated that you're like, yeah, like this is abuse to a point that's just unfathomable to a normal person. And they use their visual effects to make Hogwarts and Professor McGonagall turn into a cat, and brooms fly, and all these magical creatures come to life. And obviously, we're going to be like, that's sick, especially if you're an 11-year-old child watching this. It is a fantasy movie, not just because it is obviously in a fantasy world, but it is a fantasy of, young children who don't feel like they're in the place that they're supposed to be. And the movie does a great job of being that fantastical, escapist fantasy. And I think even if it doesn't necessarily show every single part of the book 100% accurately, I think it maintains the same sentiment, and I think it fulfills the same purpose of just being like the first ooh-ah introduction to the wizarding world, and I love it. You can disagree, but I don't care. And I think the Lizzie Bennet Diaries is the perfect adaptation of Pride and Prejudice for the setting of 2012. When we look back on it now, even the medium of that form of vlogging, that form of web series feels outdated. And it's only 12 years after, right? And it would have felt outdated in 2017, right? Because our vlogging perception went from that to Jake Paul and like Zoella and them vlogging. And those are two very different things. But if you were on the internet in 2012, which I was not, but I was on the internet in 2014, and I understand what was happening there. YouTube back then was for a far more adult crowd than I think it is today. I think many more people are on YouTube today. I think that is an objective truth, but I think YouTube was considered cooler, and for like teens and young adults, it was seen as a replacement, a new replacement for traditional media, and a way that young creators could make content that they didn't have to like get connections within the TV world to do. Which obviously it is still that, but I think it was far more based in written, scripted content than it is now. A lot of the things that YouTubers, I think, do really well now is non-scripted content. Like, I sound like a 12-year-old boy, but I think the Sidemen make really good content. It's not scripted, but it is curated. It's well produced, but it's not necessarily scripted. It's not necessarily a story. And I think we have great content creators now who do video essays and who spend time and money making their videos, but again, they're not scripted. Skits used to be a big thing on YouTube, like Fred or Smosh. Those used to be huge, and it was always striving for traditional media. So this kind of format was very much made for that time on YouTube, and it was really successful. We would even see really popular YouTube channels make actual feature films like the Smosh movie or the Fred movies, and it was like an indicator of success. I think nowadays that's just not something that YouTubers want to do. They tend to want to go on tour instead, like comedy tour or music tour. We also saw a lot of musicians get their start on older YouTube, like Troye Sivan or Dodie, which professional Dodie fan right here. My Dodie sweatshirt's back there. But I think old YouTube was very much rooted in the language of traditional media. And I think that the Lizzie Bennet Diaries is a reflection of that. It had the format and the quality of a TV show, but with the short videos that are normal for old YouTube. Back then, videos were significantly shorter. The monetization rules were different. A lot of people just didn't make any money off of YouTube and they were just doing it for fun. This was obviously, I think, a reflection of what YouTube was going to be in the minds of a lot of creators in 2012. They thought that this kind of like well-produced media is what YouTubers were striving for, because despite the fact that everyone was saying like this is going to replace traditional media, they still wanted it to exist within the same quality and format as traditional media, and I just don't think that's happened, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think YouTube can definitely still be a jumping off platform for traditional media jobs, but I think we've seen lots of people fail at it, and that's probably discouraged people. Like Lily Singh trying to do late night wasn't successful, and the Smosh movie wasn't successful, and Fred movies were a joke, and I think everyone sort of thought that that was it for that. I know YouTube did like YouTube Red movies and shows, and that was another attempt at sort of getting people into more traditional media. But even that ended after a certain while because I don't think that's what YouTube viewers really wanted to see from their creators. But I think the Lizzie Bennet Diaries sort of incorporated both elements, the shorter style, the more informal talking to the camera type of thing, and the whole idea of a vlog with scripted content, with paid actors, with sets, that kind of thing. Also, I don't know if you know this, but Pride and Prejudice, when you watch the 2005 version, which is what I like, it's a rom-com, dude. I didn't realize it the first few times I watched it, but upon rewatch, it's really funny. Pride and Prejudice is not complicated Russian literature. You know? Pride and Prejudice is not like Tolstoy. It's not complicated Russian literature where you need to know a million characters and it's really deep and all that. No. Pride and Prejudice is a fun book to read. It is not meant to be read super duper seriously, despite being a classic. It's a classic because it's old, to be fair. It's old and it is still popular for good reason, but it's also not like super duper deep. I don't think Jane Austen wrote that many super duper deep books, and that's fine because, you know, it fulfills a purpose too. And I think when you adapt it, you can't treat it as that deep. Because honestly, at the end of the day, Pride and Prejudice is a story about people going to each other's houses and talking and not talking and thinking about things and then not saying them out loud until they all finally say everything they think out loud. It's great. I love it. But really, that's what that book is. That's what the movies are, the shows are. That is Pride and Prejudice. So I think the fact that the Lizzie Bennet Diaries is not that deep and that vlogging as a format and as a medium to communicate the story is not that deep either makes it a really good adaptation. I think at the time it chose a perfect medium for the kind of audience they were looking for, which is like young adults who like books. Like this was made for millennials when millennials were like our age, and it makes sense. It seems like it, and it did a good job of that. This show feels like a rom-com. It's silly, it's goofy. Obviously, there's serious elements to it, and I would even argue more serious elements to it than Pride and Prejudice itself, but I think it's perfect for Pride and Prejudice in 2012. Also, I think it does a great job of choosing things to change. Obviously, the setting has completely changed, and so we have to change things along with it. The girls, I don't know, have jobs. They have an education. Lizzie's in grad school. Jane's working in fashion. Lydia's still doing her undergrad. There's also elements of the recession. In the original Pride and Prejudice, the Bennet family isn't doing great financially, and that's part of the reason the girls are put pressure on to like marry rich, because that is their only way out of this. Plus, they won't have access to their father's inheritance after, because they're all girls. But because the Lizzie Bennet Diaries is in 2012, and obviously girls can get their father's inheritance and the dad is not on the brink of death, they put it in the context of the consequences of the 2008 recession. Like, come on. There's a big discussion about selling the house and why Mrs. Bennet might want the girls to marry rich and why she puts so much emphasis on money. It's really cool. And like, it's a subtle detail, but they know the time that they're making the show in, and it's very, very clear. Also, Jane doesn't immediately forgive Bing when he comes back and apologizes. In Pride and Prejudice, she does, because hey, what else does she have to do? But in the show, it makes sense that she would be like, hey, no, what are you, like, that was not something that was okay to do, and I have other things to worry about. I deserve better and I can do better. Jane being older doesn't put as much pressure on her to get married and to have children, especially because she could just go be successful in her own right and then get married and maybe not have kids. That wasn't an expectation that was as big for her, other than from her mom, but that's just because the mom is crazy. In any iteration of Pride and Prejudice, they did that right too. Also, the humanization of Lydia. I think that makes more sense in 2012 than it did when Pride and Prejudice was released, because you know, women are multifaceted beings that don't just exist to get married. And Lydia's choices to run off with a man doesn't mean that she's putting shame on the whole family or anything absurd like that. And also, like, we have time to have empathy and stuff and therapy. So 2012, much better year for Lydia Bennet. Changing Mr. Collins from a romantic prospect, or honestly a romantic threat, to a professional prospect is really cool too. Because yeah, Charlotte doesn't have to randomly get married in the middle of all this because it wouldn't make any sense. But for her and Lizzie to have similar goals in life, and for Mr. Collins to present this opportunity that Lizzie does not want but Charlotte does, is cool. That also plays into the angle of Charlotte doesn't really have much money either, so taking this job could mean a lot for her and her family, which makes more sense, not because she needs to get married to make money for her family, but rather she's getting this job that will help her career grow and she'll make her shmoney. The show feels like 2012, not because you can just like look at someone's clothes and go, oh yeah, that was made in 2012, but also because they're not worried enough about being extremely faithful to the original plot, more than they're worried about making sure that it makes sense within the context of the time. Like, they chose not to make Mr. Collins a romantic prospect because it would have made no sense in 2012. They weren't worried about changing that because they didn't need to be 100% faithful to the plot and every detail in the book, because that's not what adaptation is about. I think that adaptations and translations are very similar. When you translate something from English to Spanish, you could obviously translate it literally, and it might not make sense because we have sayings that might not mean the same thing in Spanish. Same thing with the other way around. When you do a translation, you have to make sure it makes sense in the other language. It's not about saying everything exactly literally how I am saying it. It's about saying everything in a way that will convey the same message to the person that you are translating for. Why? Because it's a completely different language. It has different grammar rules. It has different aspects that the other language might just not have. There's different letters in certain languages. It's not like you can directly translate every single word. There are words in other languages that we have to describe in a phrase rather than one word. It's the same thing with adaptations. You have to account for things like budget, medium, setting, actors, all of these kinds of things in order to make the story convey the same message without necessarily saying everything the exact same word for word. I think that's really good. I'm sure someone else has said it, but to my knowledge, I made that up, and you should all give me credit for that. Thank you. And the Lizzie Bennet Diaries maintains the same vibes of like a rom-com and kind of a light piece of media, but also fulfills the same purpose, because Pride and Prejudice was a piece of feminist literature, even if now it seems like not that feminist at all. Relative to most of the stuff in the time that it was created in, it's pretty feminist. And despite the fact that we can look on the Lizzie Bennet Diaries as just girl boss, white feminism with like really, really vague, lukewarm takes, in 2012, there were certain things in that show which were, I wouldn't say revolutionary, but were definitely not the norm for most pieces of media. There was obviously girl boss feminism with Lizzie being like, I'm gonna make my own company, I don't have to work with a man. But also Lydia's whole storyline was something that I think wasn't very well represented in 2012. Maybe I was just 8 or 9 years old and I didn't know anything, but the whole concept of consent wasn't something in my head. But it wasn't just the basic, hey, if you say no, it means no conversation about consent. It was a, hey, you said yes to this, not to this, and that is okay, and it is not your fault that they took advantage of you. And hey, they pressured you into this, so I don't think that's actually consent. Those conversations are not conversations some people are willing to have now. Some people are very much advocates of no means no consent education, and that's just not how that works. Some people don't even want to talk about consent in the first place. Despite just being white girl, girl boss feminism, it still has value, and it, relative to their times, Pride and Prejudice and the Lizzie Bennet Diaries are still fairly feminist, at least compared to, I don't know, other pieces of media during their time. Obviously, there were people doing much better work on feminism at the time, much more meaningful, diverse, intersectional work on feminism, but this was still something, and I would rather have more things like this in the media if we can, because at least it's having a conversation about consent in 2012. That doesn't mean I don't want more actual good feminist work. Please keep making good feminist work. That is not what I mean. I just mean even this stuff can help in a way. But yeah, I hope I convinced you of my definition of good adaptation, because I really think I'm right about this one, and I think everyone should listen to me. So let's talk about the aftermath of the Lizzie Bennet Diaries. After the Lizzie Bennet Diaries series ended, they released a Lizzie Bennet Diaries book. This is not the Lizzie Bennet Diaries book. It is Lizzie Bennet's Diary, which my mother got for me, which is very sweet. It's like this cute children's book with like pop-ups and stuff. It's very cute. I have a birthday list, not like a Dudley Dursley, like you have to get me everything on this birthday list, but rather anyone who asks me what I want for my birthday, I couldn't possibly tell you. So throughout the year, I maintain a list of things from different price ranges that people can get me for my birthday if they want to get me a physical present, which I think is really smart and I think everyone should do it. But on my list was the Lizzie Bennet Diaries book, and I think my mom just found this one and she misunderstood, and I think that's really cute, but I still really like this one. Look, it's shiny. And all of the interactive elements are so me. And she said like, oh, I didn't really know if you really meant this one, but I looked at it and I thought you'd like it. And I was like, yeah, I do like it. It's very cute. Even the covers, like those peacocks and stuff. It's so cute. But yes, there is an actual book. The letter that Lizzie got from Mr. Darcy that we did not get to hear is in the book. And that's why I wanted the book so bad, because I wanted the letter. I'm sure I could find it online. I'm sure I have found it online at some point in the past, but I do want the book eventually. Also, the Lizzie Bennet Diaries was not the last adaptation made by Pemberley Digital of another book. All the adaptations they made after this were adaptations of books written by women, so that's kind of like slay. The next one they made was Emma Approved, which is from Jane Austen's Emma. I also love this one. I have watched it all the way through multiple times. Also, Caroline Lee, who's Caroline Bingley in the book, but Caroline Lee shows up in this one, which I think is iconic. So there's some connection to the Lizzie Bennet Diaries series. It changes the format a little bit because the reason they're filming is because Emma wants to create a documentary about how good she was at being a lifestyle coach in the future. So she's filming literally everything, including like FaceTime calls. She's so funny and so full of herself, but also insecure to a degree, and it's really great. And I also love Emma Approved, but also the guy who plays the main love interest is in all these car commercials, and I keep seeing him, and I'm the only one who actually cares that he was in Emma Approved. But now you guys all can know. I will show you one of the car commercials or something. I'll show you a picture of him. He's been in a lot of things recently. And that's honestly where I stopped watching these adaptations, but there are two more. There's Frankenstein MD, based off of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, and the only thing that I care about in this show is that Steve Zaragoza is in it, like Steve Zaragoza from SourceFed, like another channel that apparently only I knew about despite it having like 1 million subscribers. If there's any fellow SourceFed viewers, comment down below because I feel like SourceFed was underrated. Anyone else watch that like 9-hour live stream where they're ending the channel and they were kind of petty about it because they're like, wow, we're getting so much support. If only we got the support before, maybe the channel wouldn't be ending. Or is that just something I remember? It might be. I don't know. After Frankenstein MD, they had The March Family Letters, which is based off of Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. And I have no idea about this adaptation. I didn't even watch a single episode of it. And there's no Steve Zaragoza in the thumbnails, so I have no clue. After this one stopped airing, they tried to do a reboot of Emma Approved, and I love Emma Approved, and so I was eating it up, but I was eating it up in 2022, way after it just got canceled, so it's very sad. There were only like 9 episodes, but you know what? I love Emma Approved, and nobody can take that away from me. Also, the Lizzie Bennet Diaries was bought by Starz, like, yeah, the actual media company Starz, and they put it up on iTunes. So you could buy the episodes of the Lizzie Bennet Diaries like it was an actual show. Isn't that sick? I think it's really sick. And I think it shows how influential this show was because it was really popular. And I think it just fell off really quickly because the form became so outdated so quickly. Obviously, Hank Green is still doing great. John Green's still doing great. But, you know, this was a 2012 project, very much stuck in 2012. Honestly, it feels like a period piece as much as the 2005 Pride and Prejudice feels like a period piece. Hank Green is doing great on TikTok, another medium that he has very much mastered, and he has cancer, and I hope he's doing well because he's a very cool guy, and I really appreciate this weird little project that he decided to do because I heavily enjoy it. So, if you're a Mr. Darcy girl, go watch the Lizzie Bennet Diaries. I love the Lizzie Bennet Diaries. If you're a Pride and Prejudice girl at all, if you're a Bingley girl, I guess, you can go watch it too. Though I don't know many Bingley girls. If you're an Emma girl, if you love Anya Taylor-Joy, go watch Emma Approved. She looks nothing like Anya Taylor-Joy, but it's still very good. Also, I think everyone should just be more mindful when we're talking about adaptations, because I totally get it when you read a book and you're like, I want to see every single detail that I read on that page on the screen, even if it takes 6 hours. Like, I will sit there and watch it. And I totally get that. I totally get that. I totally get it. I was watching that Percy Jackson TV show and I was like, no, they're not doing enough. The episodes are too short. I get it. But they have to cut things for time, but not just for time, for the medium. And sometimes it makes a good movie, even if it's not perfectly faithful to the book. So I want you to like keep that in mind. Because I'm officially apparently the authority on all adaptation. But I really do think I have a good take on it, so, you know. So if you liked it, like the video and comment and subscribe because my videos are really good. Go watch my Dune video if you care about adaptations. I swear to God, I'm making my Salt Lake City video. I already filmed it all, and then my cool new setup was not that cool, and it made all of the footage look awful, so I have to refilm the whole thing, and I have to find a way to set it up in my normal setup. And that really makes me sad because I filmed for 2.5 hours and really it's pathetic how much time I spent doing that video for it to just end up being nothing. So subscribe, it will come out. I promise. I spent too much time on it for it not to come out. I promise it will come out. It's a long video, so it'll take a while to edit, but this video will be out first because I'm excited to put it up. So like, sub, comment, goodbye.